Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of Rising Stories podcast. I'm Corrine Sandifer, your host. And on this show, we talk about our journeys. We talk about stories that have helped us rise in our work, in our businesses, and in our everyday lives. I interview women who share their stories with us about living with intention and purpose. We also discuss all things good and wise, things that keep us productive and on task. I also ask my guests about their favorite app and what they are absolutely loving these days. If you are new to the show, thanks so much for joining us. And don't forget to visit our show notes. I'll provide a link below, and you'll want to go to the show notes to see more about our guests and what they are currently doing. Here on Rising Stories, we are in Season 2, and I am interviewing women who are making a difference in Nashville, Tennessee. Did you know that Nashville has more Kurdish residents than any other city in the U.S.? My guest today arrived in the U.S. as a refugee. Today, she is the voice of Nashville's Kurdish community. Kasar Abdulla is a community builder who is helping women to find their voice. She is giving them tools to lift themselves up as professionals, as women, and as Americans. Kasar shares her story of how she moved from North Dakota to Nashville, Tennessee, and her vision for the area of town that she calls Little Kurdistan. You'll also hear the story of how she met her husband at one of my favorite Nashville restaurants. But before we begin, I want to remind you to hit the subscribe button on iTunes. This helps others find the show. And also, don't forget to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm at Corrine Sandifer on all three. If you hear about a product on the show that you've just got to have, please use the links provided in the show notes to help support Rising Stories podcast. Here is my conversation with Kasar Abdullah. Hi, Kasar. Thanks for letting me come and interview you today.
Well, thank you. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. Oh, you've got such beautiful eyes. I can't stop looking at them. I hope I don't make you uncomfortable because they're gorgeous. But, I heard about you from someone else in the community that you are a community builder within the Kurdish community, which tell everybody about the Kurds that are here in Nashville.
Sure. So the Kurdish community really came to the United States. The first wave was in 1970s. And those Kurds were really students. They came here to study, and then the war broke out. They ended up staying. It was a much smaller number. And then we had another big wave of Kurds that came in 1990s. And that was my family.
Oh, wow. So you've been here since then.
Yeah. And so I was about 6 years old when, at that time, President Bush Sr. was the president, and he asked the Kurdish people to upraise against Saddam Hussein, the dictator, and to overthrow him. And so the Kurdish people did. And in a nutshell, Kurdish people, the U.S. Army backed out, and then Kurdish people really failed. And Saddam Hussein became extremely angry and upset, and so he carried out a genocidal attack against the Kurdish people and wanted to ethnically cleanse that region. And so my parents were agricultural farmers, along with thousands of others, and so we fled from Kurdistan to Turkey. And so I was 6 years old and lived in the refugee camps for 4 years, and that was my elementary life. And then in 1990s, in particular 1992, my family was selected among many others to come and settle in the United States. However, out of the 50 states, they settled us in Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, wow, it's cold.
It is very cold and freezing, and that's not the image we had of America. The image we had was more like California.
Yes, yes.
So we were very excited, but also very nervous. So that was the second big wave of Kurdish people, were early 90s. And then the third biggest wave came in 1995 and 96. And that was also around a lot of just turmoil took place in Middle East. And so the majority of the Kurdish people in the United States are refugees. And so they came here through the refugee process. We do have the largest community in Nashville. Outside, second largest is Dallas in California.
Right, yeah. You are helping the Kurds. Tell me how you're doing that here in Nashville.
Sure. My interest really has always sparked to do what is best for the community. While the larger community, I see everyone as my community, my people. But my inner community, the Kurdish community, also struggled a lot with integration. Being able to really integrate in their adopted country, adopted nation. And so while I was actually in college, I began to switch my major from biology to sociology and really study about people, and became very interested in wanting to be a community builder, because I do believe once we do build bridges between ourselves, like we connect ourselves, that we're stronger. And so within the Kurdish community, I began to advocate to get their voices heard. I personally like to give people the resources and equipments for them to advocate for themselves. And so I'll give you an example of, in literally right after college, I carried out a huge voter registration mobilization and just tried to get Kurdish people to really understand the American civic life and the importance of registering to vote. And Kurdish people took it really seriously. We always love democracy and we want to be part of the democracy and the democratic process. And so for those who are U.S. citizens, we're privileged to be able to vote, unlike many other immigrants who may not even have the documents to be able to vote. And for me as a woman, I became even more empowered knowing that it took many women before me, some of them even their life, to give me access to vote in the United States. And so I just feel like the best way I can repay the women before me is to actually make sure that I vote and take the struggle to the next level. And so anywhere from connecting my community and the civic process to also education. Education became, I do believe, and I sensed this when I was in the refugee camp, that even though in the refugee camp I felt like that my body was physically caged and confined to the camp, being surrounded with barbed wires and armed soldiers, the only way I felt like my soul was liberated was because of my mom and key other leaders who opened up underground schools and began to teach me. And so I felt like my soul became liberated through education. And so when Kurdish people came to Nashville, many of them, the first wave, the second wave, their families were agricultural farmers who didn't have an opportunity to go to school. They lived in extremely tough neighborhoods. And so giving them the access to public education and the choices also became a passion of mine. And that's where I'm here today. And then in addition to that, it's like being able just to connect with neighbors. I worked with Nashville Public Television to create a series of Next Door Neighbors documentaries, and the first one we piloted was on really Little Kurdistan, USA, and because I felt like Nashville was Little Kurdistan, especially comparing it to Fargo, North Dakota. The beginning, as refugees, you're settled into certain neighborhoods, and so you're fixed in that area. However, over time, Kurdish people have gone from extreme poverty to working class, middle class communities, and so they've spread out. Most of them still, there's a high percentage that they live in the southeast Nashville, but now you find them all over Davidson, Williamson, and Rutherford County area, so they're really spreading out. But we have key organizations that still connect us as a community. We have a community center, the Salahuddin Center of Nashville, where people feel very connected. They can go there, practice their Kurdish skills. Kids are learning the language. They're really feeling connected. For my parents' generation, it's really important to have a spiritual place that they can go and feel connected. We also have many of them are entrepreneurs now, and we have businesses anywhere from hospitality and restaurants. So, for example, to auto dealers and cars, and we have organizations popping up everywhere, serving different needs of the community.
And what are you doing? Tell me about the pulse of the women, the Kurdish women in this city. How are they doing?
So the joke in the community is the Kurdish women are holding the fort down. in many different areas. If you look at like political activism, there's actually 3 Kurdish females who are like pioneering it, and I'm just one of them. You have people like Durust Kokoy, who's like a young Kurdish female here. You have like Ramziya Suleiman, also like one of my peers. It really started with a woman, and we are taking our people to the state capital and making sure that they connect with their state legislatures and can really become known. Kurdish women are literally in every sector. You're going to find them in healthcare. You're going to find them in businesses. They're just everywhere. One of the challenges that we are facing as Kurdish women in the United States are quite common to what the rest of the women in the United States are facing. Battling the difference between family and profession and community. So some of the struggles are real. So, for example, not having a daycare or childcare system in the Kurdish community that can accommodate our kids. We rely on the community. We pull in the community and community's resources to support us so we can go with our careers and our professions like from day to day.
What do you wish that Nashvillians knew about the Kurdish women, about the Kurdish woman?
I wish that the Nashvillians would know that there's so much commonality between like the Nashville woman and the Kurdish woman. Like the sense of family, value in family, hospitality. I mean, like the type of spices we use and food and sort of, there's so much commonality. Like okra is so huge in the Kurdish community, and I found out like okra is a southern thing too.
Yes.
And so
like fried okra.
Like exactly. And so there are. I wish people could know that we are one dynamic group of human beings. We've had our struggles, but our struggles are the human struggle. We are quite friendly and quite open. I think the Kurdish culture in general is very open and very people-oriented. Women, again, like, lead in so many of these areas. Even if you look at it internationally, like some of our biggest forces are the Kurdish female Peshmergas. I think the issue with like the Kurdish community and in particular Kurdish women is like our stories are not told as much, and so we are a misunderstood community, and the narratives out there are told about us, and we haven't like led our own narrative as much as we should.
What would you like the whole country to know about Little Kurdistan? Is that what you called it?
I call it Little Kurdistan, USA.
Okay. Yes, Little Kurdistan, USA.
I mean, I would love for people to know the impact Little Kurdistan have had on the Tennessee community in general, and even United States, the way we're contributing to the community. I joked about when my family moved from Fargo, North Dakota, like down to Nashville, Tennessee. So we didn't really choose to come to the United States. Our conditions pushed us to come, but my family really chose Nashville as their home, and we've been here for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I've traveled all around the United States, but I keep coming back to Nashville. Nashville is just it for me and for thousands of other Kurdish people. And we have contributed so much to the community. Anywhere from like introducing pomegranates and turmeric and all these spices to naan, the flat bread that now people just love going to the fresh Kurdish markets and getting the bread. And again, this is like our ordinary neighbors. And so having to sort of bring that to the community, not only an economic opportunity, but really a different flavor from a different part of the world.
Yeah. What's the Kurdish market that you go to where I can get some good naan? I love naan.
Yes. So Azadi Market, Mazi Market, Nowruz Market, Sulav Market, these are all
Are they all on Nowruz Road?
All of them are on Nowruz Road, and that's why I called that little area Little Kurdistan, USA, because many were settled right there, many businesses opened up right there.
So there is an area.
Yes, there is an area, but now it's like spread out.
Yeah, the people are spread out, which is fine.
Yeah, but the
businesses. So
right across from Nashville Zoo.
Yeah.
Right
oh, yeah.
There's also lot of restaurants. One of my ultimate favorite one is House of Kebab. Not only because that's where I met my husband, but
is it? Oh,
yeah.
I love House of Kebab, and it's been here for years.
It's been here for years.
It's probably one of the first ones that opened up. Because I've been going to it for a long time.
They specialize in Kurdish and Persian food, and it's a wonderful restaurant. If you want to try it, if you want to get a taste of some of the Kurdish food, you hop on right there.
It's a great restaurant. Yeah, I have been there. Tell me what are your goals? What's next for Kasar?
It's interesting because as a woman of God, I feel like you plan and then God plans, and I believe God is the best of all planners. And so most of the goals that I immediately set for myself, I've accomplished. Being the first generation who graduated and got her master level degree, which actually is a fascinating thing. Is more Kurdish females have their master's and PhD level degrees than are men.
Yes.
And, establishing a family, I'm a mother of 3 daughters, just fabulous. The other goal I really had set myself is really to work with an institution that brings other options to the community, not only for the Kurdish community, but the community that lives in Southeast Nashville. And that's why I work with Valor Collegiate Academies as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. These are the communities that are all about education. Education is very dear to us, and we see the fruits and benefits of education. So I'd like to push that a little further on it. My goal in life, another one is I really want to see a Kurdish elected, person in office, whether it be on the school board, metro council, or the Senate, or even one day run for United States president. If my daughter wants to run, would love to sort of create the path to make it possible. That's a missing area. I feel like
that they're not in politics.
They're voting and they're active.
That's
they're definitely voting. I want to push more in the community to run for office, and particularly Kurdish female, because I strongly believe in the knowledge and the wisdom that they bring to the conversation. So I do want to see that happen.
I would love that. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Of course, and I'm vying for the first, Hispanic president.
Yes.
I think we're getting close. We've got some people in the running.
I think what I found out over the years, I'm in my 30s, what I have learned is that when you really do understand diversity and the value of diversity, and you have an inclusive process for that diversity, it makes us extremely strong.
Yes.
People bring in different ideas, and my dream and my hopes are, that we're going to raise visionary leaders who can tackle our societal issues, transportation, Nashville's getting intensively bad.
It is. We need somebody to help.
To healthcare, to education, to environment. I'm hoping that we can really use our energy and use our resources to take care of major societal problems. I want people to know me for some of my passions in this area. I don't want just people to know me as the Kurdish girl or the Kurdish woman who's activist and a community facilitator or a community builder. I want them to know hey, we're gonna get through some of these societal issues, and
I love that. So tell me, what are you enjoying these days? What are you reading?
So I love to read. I gotta say, it's been more challenging to find the time to read, being
because you're
working
busy
mom and
mom,
community facilitator. But I do carve time in there because I just love reading. My mother used to tell me this when I was younger, that in order to change the world outside you, you must begin with changing the world inside you.
Absolutely.
And you can change the world inside you through reading. And so right now I'm reading a book called Road to Character by David Brooks, which I just love it. And coming to the United States, I struggled integrating in some of the concepts that, culturally, in the Kurdish culture, were brought up to be very communal and very we-focused. Whereas here in the United States, the American part of me is very I-focused and very individualistic. And so I struggled with that because I don't think either or is healthy. For example, when I was in college, my father really wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer because this was going to be very beneficial, not just to me, to the family, to the community. And so it was this, we concept. And I personally was feeling my drive towards, social activism, the study of sociology, and political activism. Like, I was driven by that. And so I struggled with convincing my father where I should go and just do what I want to do. Not because I want to be self-centered, but I felt this drive. But I also understood my father's point. But reading this book, Road to Character, it really helped me make sense. David Brooks talks about Adam 1 and Adam 2. And after reading the book, I really feel like there's a balance between the two. The power of I and we is only strong when you balance the two. And so I'm really enjoying reading that book.
That's a good point. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I'm going to come back to, you said you met your husband at House of Kebab. How did that come about? I didn't want to forget that.
Yes.
I was like, I want to talk to her about that.
It's a fascinating story, long story.
Was he just there hanging out?
He really was. He was studying in Netherlands there, so he wasn't even living here. His uncles and cousins actually owned the restaurant at that time. And I was, senior year in college, having lunch with one of my friends, and then he came on to take my order. And, he said, "Good afternoon, ladies. What can I get you to drink?" And I was like, wow, in my head, I was like, his accent was so weird. And then I automatically knew he was new in the community, but I didn't pay attention to it. So we ordered and he leaves. My friend and I were like discussing the menu. He comes back, takes our order, and then he goes. And there's a traditional Kurdish drink called dao, which is like a yogurt drink. And so that was my special drink I would get all the time at House of Kebab. And he brings me this mega cup. I mean, like, it was huge drink of Dao. And I told my friend that was so strange. Maybe their dishwasher is not keeping up with their dishes. Like, I didn't order this mega drink. Yeah. But, we went on about it. I didn't know that he had asked his cousin if he could come and take my order so he can check me out. Oh. And he's been, like, listening and having conversations. Told his cousin, like, I have to know who she is. I want to know how to connect with her. To make the story short, then his trip, he had to go back to Netherlands to finish studying. And his cousins said, well, her uncle's really good. We know him and we connected with him. Back and forth. End of the story, he reaches out to me while he was in Netherlands, and I hung up the phone on him. I was a very stubborn, non-traditional Kurdish woman when it came to marriage. I made it very clear to my parents that I'm not getting married, that I was focused on school, and I wanted to travel around the world and just do what I can to give back to the community and then give back to my adopted nation, like, that literally adopted me and raised me. And so I was very focused on that. And so my parents knew I was stubborn, and any prospect that came around, they were like, nope, don't even try. Don't even try. But my husband didn't give up. He kept trying long-distance conversations. And then my uncle goes and, sends out people to investigate who he is without me knowing anything. So they were literally trying to build a good case for him, that why I should just hear him out. End of the story, like, months into it, he came back to visit. I agreed to sit down and just get to know him, but I said, this isn't a date. I don't date boys. Don't tell people you date. He was like, no, this is a conversation. Okay, yeah. And I think what really spoke out to me about him was how much he respected me. It was really his character, like how he carried himself more so than anything. And then, of course, the battle came between when we got serious about the relationship, that I wasn't going to leave America. He was a Dutch citizen. He wanted me to go there. And I was like, if you're serious about the relationship, you have to come here. And I thought he wasn't. But literally, like, 2 weeks into it, he's like, I'm going to pack my bag. I'm coming over. Wow. And so, like, we've been married for 11 years now. Very happy. Awesome. I mean, he's a a partner and a best friend to me in so many ways. I would have not been able to do what I do without the support of my husband.
Yeah.
You know, he's a co-parent.
Yeah.
You know, we cook together, we eat together, we play together, like we're raising kids together.
You found the right one that was able to respect you and know that you had something greater, a greater purpose. And he was, you know, getting behind you and saying, go for it,
absolutely.
do it.
In the elderly Kurdish generations, and again, the Kurdish community, the other thing I guess I would love for the Nashville community to know about the Kurdish community is that we are not a monolithic community. We're very diverse. We're diverse politically. We're diverse theology, profession-wise, in the way we work. And so... you know, I came from a different tribe than my husband, and I remember marrying into his family, and the gender expectations were so different from the way I was raised. Like, I grew up in a family where my mother worked. You know, my mother was actually the main breadwinner because my father became disabled and after a car accident, and so I was very used to being like the breadwinner.
Yeah,
you know, and, whereas my mother's side of the family like had a hard time with that, like. And it came from love, really. You know, my mother-in-law saying, like, you are pregnant, you know, take care of yourself, you know, stay home. And I'm like, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
You know, you're right. Like, it's a setback for us women. We have to carry the child for 9 months, not our husbands, right? But we can also do it. That doesn't mean you become handicapped, for example. I had to meet her where she was at and gradually get her to understand that my generation is different from her generation. The place of the world that I live on is different from her. We live in a time where in the United States it actually requires 2 people to work in a household, right? Like, it's becoming like that. And also that there are jobs out there that a pregnant woman can do, right? And so getting her to really understand, when she came here and visit us, she not only appreciated the work that I do, she just found comfort in the work that I did, and just became my supporter in a way.
That's awesome.
You know, now she goes back and tells everybody about the work that I do. Yeah, she still lives over in Kurdistan, but yeah, she went from like opposing me working in the outside of the home to really being an advocate.
Yes.
You know, which is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kasar, 2 last questions. These are just kind of fun questions. One is, what is your favorite spice?
Okay.
Here you brought up spices, and so I want to ask you what your favorite spice is.
So I love spices. It's going to be hard for me to give you one, but I can tell you a couple that I
put in
everything. Salt, for sure.
Okay.
I love salt. Black pepper. Turmeric is the other one. And cayenne pepper. These are like my must-have in most of the seasonings that I cook.
Turmeric and cayenne?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely love it.
That sounds really good. Yeah. Mine's cumin. I thought you were going to say cumin.
Yeah.
Because I love cumin. That's
cumin
like my
too.
favorite.
Put cumin in food too, for sure.
And what are some things that you have recently purchased or that you just absolutely love that are like lifesavers or like fun things?
Yeah. A couple of things. Like, one for my kids, it's been Legos and books. My daughters are very into books. My 2-year-old, I ordered a Curious George book where Curious George discovers Ramadan and talks about what is Ramadan, what is Eid, for my daughter. And that was pretty cool. Like, as a parent to discover that, I'm like, oh, there aren't many culturally competent books to talk about, you know, Muslim or even the Kurdish community.
Right.
And so that was really good. And that has also really inspired me to want to write my own story. So it's been on my mind. I've been verbally telling my kids my story through, you know, last year I discovered to my older daughter that actually the story I've been telling is true, and that's what Mommy went through. You know, she cried, and you know, because now she's 10 and she can understand.
Yes.
Whereas my other daughters, like, I just tell them the story of Gavuke, who was a little girl, and she had to leave, and so I've been telling them the story. And of course, my husband keeps saying, "When are you going to get to the good part of when Gavuke meets her husband?"
Well, we told that today. They can listen to this podcast because we told.
Yeah.
I definitely think you need to write a book. That's what a great story. From everything, from talking about your husband to, from when you were little and how all that came about and how you landed here and maybe discovering Nashville. Because you were how old when you got here?
I was 6 when I left Kurdistan. I was almost 10 when I came to the United States.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you arrived in Nashville, how old were you?
In Nashville, I was 14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really awesome. And I also think that somebody needs to start a little museum here to tell the story, especially for people that come to Nashville to visit. There's so many visitors. I mean, there may be some people from all over. I mean, some Kurds, I'm sure, settled elsewhere.
Sure.
It'd be nice for them to come here and enjoy our little Kurdistan.
Yeah, we do, and we've actually been a major hub for people who are interested and curious to know and understand about the Kurdish community. So, for example, Kurdistan regional government sends their Kurdish police officers to Nashville, Tennessee to actually learn about the relationship between Nashville police and then the Kurdish community and really learn from the Kurdish community what Kurdish police officers do.
Yeah.
To where actually last year I also hosted a group of influentials and politicians from Kurdistan who focus on education, and they're trying to reform the education system in Kurdistan, and they came to Nashville, Tennessee to really learn about some of our successes, some of our failures, and particularly also how do we educate Kurdish students. We've also had people who just want to come and literally from other states and want to taste Kurdish food. The biggest Nowruz celebration always happens in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a Kurdish New Year on March 21st, which also marks spring, New Year, and there's a lot of history to what it means to be Kurd. So it draws so many people from other states to come to Nashville.
That's really cool. Thank you so much for talking with me and sharing your story.
You're welcome. Thank you for wanting to highlight my story and my community. I really appreciate it.
I love how Kasar is taking all the resources she has and giving others a helping hand. She is helping to empower a whole community and empowering professional women and their families. If you want to know more about Kasar and the Kurdish community in Nashville, please visit our website at KareenSandifer.com to hear more. Also, consider supporting Rising Stories podcast by purchasing books and products mentioned on the show. Thanks so much for listening, and keep rising in your story.